My name is Chloe Allen. I'm 23 years old, and for most of my life, I've carried silence like a second skin. Not the peaceful kind of silence, the aching kind. The kind that makes you invisible in a house full of people who claim they love you. My earliest memories aren't of birthdays or laughter or bedtime stories. They're of my sister Olivia slamming doors, of my parents arguing in whispers just loud enough for me to hear, and of me, curled up on the carpet in the hallway pretending I didn't exist. Because when I did exist, when I asked for anything, I was told I was difficult, sensitive, dramatic. I was 14 when I first started therapy. That was also the year Olivia told me I was embarrassing for talking to someone about my feelings. You really can't handle anything on your own, can you? She'd said, rolling her eyes as she passed me in the hallway. I still remember the way she said it, the way she looked at me like I was something sticky on the bottom of her shoe. But it was years later after college, after moving back home when things fell apart, that she finally said the thing that broke me. You're a burden, Chloe. She said it calmly, over breakfast. I had just told her that I was having a rough week and needed some time to reset before job hunting again. She didn't yell. She didn't even raise her voice. She just sipped her coffee and delivered it like a truth the whole world already knew. And my parents? They didn't say a word. Not Olivia. That's too far. Not Chloe. We're here for you. Nothing. I went back to my room, shut the door, and sat on the floor like I used to. I stared at my hands for a long time, trying to remember what it felt like to be worth something. That's when something shifted. Because for the first time, I didn't want to disappear. I wanted to speak, loudly, clearly, and not just for me. I wanted to speak for every girl who's ever been told her pain was too much. For every teen who hides their panic attacks behind a smile. For everyone who's ever been shamed for needing help. I didn't know how yet. I didn't even know where to begin. But I did know one thing. I was going to use Olivia's words and Olivia's image to do it, not for revenge, at least not the cruel kind, but because sometimes the best way to heal is to tell the truth, unfiltered, uncomfortable, and unforgettable. The idea started with a notebook, a plain one. I wrote down everything she'd ever said to me, every comment, every side glance, every moment that made me shrink. Then I started drawing. I sketched a face, not hers exactly, but a silhouette that resembled the way she always looked when she judged me. The brows slightly raised, the lips curved in disgust, the sharpness underneath it. I wrote the words, "Not all wounds are visible." I didn't know it yet, but that would become the tagline for the campaign that would change my life. That same night, I signed up for a free mental health awareness workshop online. I didn't talk. I just listened. But something clicked. These people got it. Not in a pitying way. In a Me Too way. I wasn't alone. I had never been. I just didn't know where to look. I started small. An Instagram account. Just a few quotes and sketches. No face. No real name. Just truths. And it started growing. Slowly. 10 followers became 50. 50 became 200. Comments poured in. Messages from strangers thanking me for saying what they couldn't. Olivia still had no idea. To her, I was still the quiet one, the broken one, the sister with issues. What she didn't know was that I was turning those issues into a message that was reaching hundreds of people, soon to be thousands. I still lived in the same house, still ate at the same table, still got the same looks when I said I needed a mental health day. But inside, I was building something stronger than any insult she could throw at me, one post at a time. And I wasn't done yet. I don't think Olivia ever noticed the way I changed. That's the thing about people who think they've won. They stop paying attention. She still walked around the house like she owned the air. Still tossed her keys on the counter with that careless clatter that made me flinch. Still made snide comments, masked as advice. You know, Chloe, maybe you'd feel better if you stopped being so negative all the time. Translation: if you stopped feeling altogether. She didn't know that while she was out with her friends, laughing over bottomless brunch and snapping photos for Instagram, I was at home designing something that would live long after her captions were forgotten. My page, unseen but not silent, passed 10,000 followers that week. People started sharing my sketches, especially the one with the silhouette, the face that wasn't Olivia's, but was inspired by her all the same. The caption read, "Sometimes the people who tell you you're too much are the ones who can't handle the truth." I posted it at 3 a.m. By 9 a.m., it had over 4,000 shares. I stared at my phone in shock. Then, I smiled. For the first time in years, I felt powerful. And still, no one in this house noticed. My parents thought I was finally staying quiet. Olivia assumed I was sulking less. Maybe that meant I was getting better. But I wasn't healing in silence. I was building a megaphone. And then one day, someone messaged me. Someone from a well-known nonprofit focused on mental health advocacy. They were launching a campaign for Mental Health Awareness Month and wanted to feature my art. They asked if I'd be open to sharing a face, a story, a name. I stared at that message for a long time. I wasn't scared of being seen. Not anymore. But I was scared of how Olivia and the rest of my family would react. Would they feel exposed? Angry? Humiliated? Would they try to make me feel guilty for sharing my truth? Probably. But the thing is, it was mine. She didn't own my pain. I did. So I replied with one word: yes. I spent the next few weeks working harder than I ever had. I designed 3 new pieces for the campaign, each one rooted in something Olivia had said to me over the year. One sketch was a figure holding their head in their hands, with the words, "It's not weakness, it's weight, and I've been lifting it alone." Another showed 2 versions of the same person, one smiling, one cracking underneath. High functioning doesn't mean unbroken. And the third, the most personal? It was that silhouette again. Olivia's echo, now fully formed. But this time, instead of disgust in the eyes, there was indifference, and beneath it, they said I was a burden. I turned the label into a battle cry. It went viral before the campaign even launched. A news outlet picked it up. Then another. Soon, my face wasn't just behind the art, it was the art. My story. My name. Chloe Allen. Artist. Mental health advocate. Survivor. And guess who saw it? Olivia. I was sitting in the kitchen eating toast when she came storming in, phone in hand. "Chloe, what the hell is this?" She shoved her screen toward me. It was the article. My face right below the silhouette. Her silhouette. "You used me," she snapped. I didn't look away. I used my experience. If that makes you uncomfortable, maybe think about why. Her mouth opened, closed. And for once, Olivia had nothing to say. She turned and left the room. I sat there, toast forgotten, my hands shaking, not from fear, from release. Because after everything, after years of being labeled, silenced, dismissed, I finally got to speak, and this time, the world listened. That afternoon, my parents cornered me. They said they were concerned that I was airing family issues in public. My mom actually said, "Don't you think this will make people think we're bad parents?" And that's when I realized they never cared about the truth, only the appearance. I looked at them both, and for the first time, I didn't cry, I didn't shrink. I said, "You didn't think I needed help when I was hurting. You didn't think Olivia was cruel when she called me a burden, so don't act like you care now." My dad opened his mouth, but I held up my hand. "I'm not asking for your support, I'm giving myself permission." I left the room before they could respond. That night, I made a new post. Healing doesn't mean pretending it didn't hurt. It means you get to walk away with your head high, scars and all. The comments poured in. People saying they'd never felt so seen, that they were finally able to talk to their families, that they printed my sketches and taped them to their mirrors, that they felt hope. And that's when I realized this was bigger than Olivia, bigger than me. This was about giving a voice to the quiet ones, the ones like me, once invisible, now rising, and I wasn't done. Not even close. A week after the campaign launched, My inbox was overflowing. Messages from survivors, artists, therapists, teachers, teenagers, moms, people who had never seen themselves in a campaign before, until they saw my words, my face, until they saw their story in mine. I read every message, every paragraph of pain and gratitude and resonance. It was overwhelming, in the best way. But inside my house, the energy had changed. Olivia barely looked at me anymore. My parents walked on eggshells, like I was about to explode. But they weren't worried about me. They were worried about them, about how they looked. My mom started saying things like, "You know, Chloe, we've always wanted what's best for you." And my dad added, "Maybe we didn't understand before, but we do now." I didn't buy it, because it wasn't guilt that drove them to say those things. It was exposure. And the thing is, I didn't write this story to expose anyone. I didn't name names. I didn't post family photos. I didn't need to. The truth, once spoken, echoes. And Olivia's words had echoed far enough to find ears that cared. The campaign's director called me that weekend. She wanted to fly me out to New York for a panel on young mental health advocates. I stared at the email for a full minute before my body caught up with my brain. New York. A panel. Me, on a stage. The same girl who used to curl up in the hallway just to feel invisible was now being asked to speak into a microphone in front of a live audience. I called the director back, my voice trembling. I'd be honored. I didn't tell my family. I didn't need their approval. I packed my bag, booked my flight, and left a simple note on the kitchen counter. Gone to New York. To speak up. Finally. The flight was a blur of nerves and exhilaration. I kept replaying Olivia's voice in my head. "You're a burden." That phrase, once a dagger, now sounded almost laughably small. The event was held in a modern auditorium, surrounded by posters of the campaign. My sketches, my words were everywhere. I stood backstage, clutching my note cards, my knees a little weak. But when I stepped into the spotlight and saw the audience faces looking back with softness, not judgment, something in me settled. I took a deep breath and said, I was told I was a burden, not just by strangers, but by people I loved. I believed them for a long time until I started speaking, until I realized my feelings weren't failures. They were signals, and I wasn't alone. I paused. The room was silent, but not in the suffocating way I knew from childhood. This silence was reverent, healing. I turned pain into art, art into voice, and voice into power. And now, I stand here not just for me, but for every quiet person who was made to feel like their existence was too loud. The room erupted in applause. I couldn't move. I just stood there, stunned, grateful, undone. Afterward, people came up to me in tears. Strangers told me their stories. One girl, maybe 17, said, "You gave me the courage to tell my mom how I feel," and she listened. And that was the moment I realized this wasn't about revenge. This was about restoration. When I got back home, Olivia was sitting on the couch. Her phone was in her lap, and she was watching my panel speech. When our eyes met, she didn't look angry. She looked hollow. "I didn't know it affected you that much," she said quietly. I sat across from her. "You didn't want to know." She swallowed hard, her voice brittle. "I thought I was being honest. Tough love, you know?" I shook my head. "Tough love doesn't tear people down. It builds them up. You just liked having power." She didn't argue. For once, she listened. And then she asked, "Did you really model that face after me?" I looked her straight in the eyes. "Yes." She flinched. But I didn't apologize, because the truth shouldn't be softened to protect the person who caused the wound. A few days later, I got another call from a publishing imprint that wanted to offer me a book deal, a collection of my illustrations, essays, and stories. A healing journey, they called it. They even suggested a title, Burden, the label they gave me, the voice I took back. I stared at the screen, stunned. And then I laughed. Out loud, alone in my room, joy pouring out like a dam finally cracked. I signed the contract the next morning. That night at dinner, I brought it up casually. I'm writing a book, I said. Silence. Then my dad asked, "Is it about us?" I didn't blink. "It's about me. But if you see yourselves in it, that's not my fault." They didn't say another word, and I didn't need them to, because for the first time, I wasn't looking for their validation. I had found something better, myself. The book deal came with deadlines, publicity, and a small but dedicated team of people who actually believed in me. My editor, a woman named Kim, called my work raw and necessary. Every time she said it, I felt a small knot in my chest loosen. Kim encouraged me to write about the moments, not just the messages. So I started pulling them from memory like thread from a tangled skein. The night Olivia read my therapy journal without asking. The day she told a group of friends that I was too unstable to travel. The time I cried in the bathroom after a panic attack, and she slid a note under the door that said, "Get it together, people are tired of this." Each one, a bruise I'd hidden under long sleeves. Now I was laying them bare. Not to shame her, but to show the pattern. Because it wasn't about one mean comment. It was a culture. One of silence, dismissal, and shame. A culture I was done participating in. When the cover art was finalized, my now iconic silhouette sketch on a pale gray background, I posted it with the caption, "She said I was a burden." So I told the world what that felt like. The comments flooded in, thousands. But one stood out. It was from Olivia. She commented under a different account, probably hoping I wouldn't notice. But I recognized the phrasing. Some people love playing victim, telling half-truths to get sympathy. My chest tightened, but not from fear, from sadness. Even now, after all this growth, she still saw my truth as an attack. I didn't respond. Not because I didn't have words, but because I finally understood that her opinion didn't matter. The book tour kicked off a month later. First stop, Chicago. Standing in that bookstore under a banner with my name and my words, I realized something strange. I didn't feel like an imposter anymore. For so long, I thought my pain made me less. Now it was making space for others to feel more. During the Q&A, a college student raised their hand and asked, "What would you say to the person who first called you a burden?" I didn't even hesitate. "I'd say thank you," I replied, not because they were right, but because they gave me the contrast I needed to find my voice. And now that I have it, I won't ever go silent again. Applause, flashes, smiles, but what I felt most was peace. And then a few weeks later, something unexpected happened. An email from Olivia, subject line, "Am I really the villain?" I stared at it for a long time before opening it. "I saw your interview. I read the excerpts. I didn't think you'd go through with it. I guess part of me didn't believe you had it in you. That's on me. I want to say I'm sorry, but I know that's not enough. I just need to know. Did I ruin you?" I read that line over and over. Did I ruin you? I thought about all the nights I'd cried quietly so she wouldn't hear. I thought about every birthday where her presence overshadowed mine. I thought about the way she said burden like it was a fact, not an insult. Then I thought about the girl I am now, and I realized the answer. I hit reply. No, you didn't ruin me. You refined me, and while I don't forgive you yet, I've stopped living under your shadow. That's enough for me. I didn't know if she'd respond. She didn't, but I felt something close inside me. Not resentment, not even forgiveness, just completion. That night, I posted a short video to my followers. It was just me. No filter, no music. Just my voice. Sometimes healing means you won't get the apology. You won't get the understanding, but you will get your power back. And that's more than enough. I logged off and went to bed smiling. The first time someone called me a movement leader, I laughed out loud. Not because I didn't appreciate it, but because if you'd told me 2 years ago that my pain would turn into purpose, I would have rolled my eyes and crawled under the covers. But here I was, hosting workshops at universities, collaborating with nonprofits, headlining panels about mental health in marginalized families. My inbox was a storm of speaking invitations, podcast requests, and media inquiries, I wasn't famous, but I was visible. And for someone who spent most of her life trying not to take up space, that visibility felt revolutionary. My book, Burden, was a bestseller within 3 weeks. What surprised me most wasn't the sales. It was the messages. They came in waves. Your story is mine. You put into words what I've never been able to say. Your sketches helped my daughter open up to me. I showed your video to my school counselor. My sister used to say the same thing to me. I thought it was just me. Each one a mirror. Each one a reminder that my story wasn't just mine. It was ours. But with the success came something else. Scrutiny. People wanted to know, who was the sister? Who said the thing that changed your life? What does she think about all this? I never named her in the book. Never showed her face. I told the story from my point of view. Truthfully. Respectfully. Unflinchingly. But the internet is relentless. They found her. All it took was a few connections. A tagged family photo, a comment under my launch post, and Olivia's LinkedIn. Suddenly, people were talking about her too. Not cruelly, not in mobs, but publicly. Some of her old high school classmates commented things like, "Wow, that explains why she always acted better than everyone." Not surprised. She was brutal in group projects. This is why we cut her off in college. I didn't condone it, but I didn't stop it either, because the truth is, Olivia had never once protected me from humiliation. Not in childhood, not in high school, not even last year. So I didn't owe her silence. Then came the real a large mental health startup, known for using powerful personal stories in its digital campaigns, reached out. They wanted to partner with me for their upcoming national series, titled The Face of Harm. Their concept: use actual phrases spoken to real people to educate the public on what emotional abuse looks like in everyday life. Guess what quote they wanted to lead with? "You're a burden." I said yes without blinking. They asked if they could use the sketch. The silhouette. The one based on Olivia? Again, yes. Because sometimes justice doesn't wear a gavel. Sometimes it wears a billboard. The campaign launched 2 weeks later. Digital signs in subways, pop-ups on social media, a massive print in Times Square. My sketch, Olivia's profile shadowed in grayscale, with bold white letters across the chest. "You're a burden. We call it abuse. You should too." Below it, art by Chloe Allen, author of Burden. I cried when I saw it. Not because I was proud, but because it meant that maybe, just maybe, some kid on the edge of hopelessness would see it and pause, would realize they weren't weak, or dramatic, or broken. They were simply hurting, and hurting people deserve help. Later that week, I got a text from Olivia. "So now I'm the face of emotional abuse? You really did it." That's all it said. I stared at the screen, fingers hovering over the keyboard. Then I replied, "You made me feel like a burden." I turned it into a warning label for others. "If you don't like that, maybe it's time to reflect." She didn't text back, but a few days later, I saw something that stopped me cold. Olivia's Instagram bio had changed. It now read, "Learning, unlearning, mental health matters." Was it genuine? Was it performative? I didn't know. I didn't need to know. Because this wasn't about her anymore. It was about the girl who had once scribbled sketches in secret, hiding tears behind her bedroom door, now standing in front of thousands, unafraid. And maybe, just maybe, the person who once broke her would start to see the cracks in herself. But either way, I was done carrying the weight. The burden no longer belonged to me. By the time the campaign ended, my voice was everywhere. Panels, podcasts, school visits, art galleries. People weren't just listening anymore. They were changing. One teacher wrote to me saying her school now used my sketches in mental health awareness lessons. A college counseling center printed my words on posters and hung them in dorm halls. Someone even got a tattoo of the line, "Not all wounds are visible." I was making an impact. And yet, a part of me still felt unfinished. Not because I hadn't said enough, but because I hadn't said it to her. Olivia. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It wasn't even about justice. It was about clarity. I didn't want to carry her ghost around in the lines of my story. I wanted to know, did she understand what she did? Or was she just embarrassed now that the world had seen the mirror I held up? The opportunity came sooner than I expected. I was hosting an open gallery event, a quiet, intimate showcase in our hometown. My pieces were printed large, each one accompanied by a short written caption. No fanfare, just reflection. It was meant to be grounding, personal. My parents didn't come, but Olivia did. She walked in midway through the night, alone. She wore a neutral beige blazer, like she was trying not to stand out, but she always had that presence, subtle sharpness, like a warning sign you couldn't look away from. She stood in front of the silhouette, her silhouette. She didn't flinch, didn't storm out, just stared. I watched from across the room, unsure whether to go to her or let her leave on her own terms. But then she turned and walked straight to me. "I figured you'd say I didn't belong here," she said. I shook my head. "This isn't about belonging, it's about seeing." She nodded once, looked down, then back at me. "I read the book," she said. "I read it twice." My stomach tightened. "And?" Her voice cracked just slightly. It was like reading someone I knew, but never listened to. Silence. Then she whispered, "I'm sorry. I waited." It didn't feel like manipulation. Not this time. There was no edge in her tone, no self-defense, just a quiet unraveling. "I thought I was helping," she said. "I thought being hard on you would make you stronger." "You didn't make me strong," I said. "You made me disappear." She winced. "I didn't know," she said. "You didn't ask," I replied. She nodded again, this time slower, heavier. "I'm not asking for forgiveness," she said. "I just didn't want you to think I was proud of how I treated you." I looked at her for a long moment, and then I said something I never thought I'd say. "I don't hate you, Olivia." Her eyes watered, just slightly. "I don't love you either," I added. "Not the way I used to. But I'm not here to punish you. I just needed to tell the truth." She swallowed hard. "You did." I looked back at the sketch. "That face? It's not just yours. It's everyone who ever said, 'You're too much.' It's everyone who rolled their eyes at anxiety, who mocked therapy, who used words like crazy like they meant nothing." She turned to look at it too. "And now?" I smiled. "Now, it means everything." There was no hug, no dramatic music, no perfect reconciliation. She left the gallery quietly, hands in her pockets. But this time, she didn't walk away with power. I did. That night, I stood alone in the center of the exhibit after everyone else had gone. The lights dimmed, my voice echoed in the stillness. This journey wasn't about making anyone pay. It was about making myself heard. For every person silenced in their own home. For every girl who was told her sensitivity made her weak. For every kid hiding in their room, afraid to be too loud, too soft, too emotional, too real. I picked up a marker and walked to the guest book near the exit. I wrote, "She called me a burden, but I built an empire out of everything she tried to break, and I'm still building." Then I walked out into the night. No longer haunted, no longer hiding, just me, whole. 1 year after the gallery show, I stood on a stage I never dreamed of reaching. The TEDx letters glowed behind me. My sketch, the silhouette that once haunted me, was projected 10 feet tall on the screen above my head. And I wasn't trembling anymore. I wasn't apologizing for taking up space. I was home. I stepped up to the mic, wearing a simple black jumpsuit, hair pulled back, palms dry. No script this time, just my story, my voice. "People like to talk about resilience," I began. "But we forget what resilience really means. It's not being unbreakable. It's being broken. Again and again, and still choosing to stand back up. I paused. In my case, I wasn't just broken by life, I was broken by the people who were supposed to protect me. A murmur of recognition in the crowd, not judgment. Understand. I shared pieces of my journey, how I was labeled too sensitive, how my sister once told me I was a burden, how that label nearly became my truth. But something happened, I said, voice steady. I stopped waiting for permission to speak. I stopped asking if my pain was real. I picked up a pencil. I drew her face. And I told the world what that word meant. I turned to look at the sketch behind me. It didn't scare me anymore. Burden used to haunt me. Now it's a book, a gallery, a campaign, a billboard, a conversation in classrooms and living rooms and therapy sessions around the world. Applause rose. I waited for it to settle. And maybe, I said, someone right now is being called too much, too emotional, too broken. But I want them to know your story isn't a weakness. It's a spark. The ovation was thunderous. But it wasn't the sound that made me emotional. It was the eyes. People looked at me with recognition, with relief, with hope. After the talk, I signed books and hugged strangers who told me they felt seen for the first time. A young girl in a hoodie whispered, "I thought I was the only one who felt like a burden." I knelt down and told her, "That word doesn't belong to you." And it never did. She smiled with tears in her eyes. That night, I went home and sat on my bedroom floor, my old safe space, the place I used to hide in. I looked around. Same walls, same carpet. But I was different. I was free. A notification buzzed on my phone. A news article. Mental health advocate, Chloe Allen, named one of the top 100 voices of the year. I laughed softly to myself. The girl they told to be quiet just made the list for being heard. A few weeks later, I received a thick envelope in the mail. No return address. Inside, a handwritten letter. It was from Olivia. No snide tone, no defensiveness, just ink and honesty. "I won't pretend I understand everything you went through, but I'm trying. I joined a support group. I've started therapy. And every week, I share your book with someone who needs it. I hope that means something." It did, but not because I needed it, because she needed to say it. And that told me something had shifted. In her, in me, in the world. That final spring, I launched my own nonprofit, Beneath the Label. We offer free workshops in schools, online support groups, and art-based healing programs for youth in toxic family systems. Survivors aren't just heard, they're equipped. The organization's motto: "We were never too much. They were just too small to hold us." Now my sketch is everywhere, not just on walls and books, but tattooed on arms, stitched into clothing, projected onto school banners. It's no longer her silhouette. It belongs to everyone who was silenced. And me? I still sketch, still speak, still build, but I no longer do it for validation. I do it for the girl who once whispered apologies just for existing, for the millions who think their feelings are too heavy to carry, for anyone who has ever been made to believe that their presence is a problem. Because I was called a burden, and I turned it into a platform, a book, a movement, a mirror. And in that mirror, people no longer see shame. They see truth. They see healing. They see themselves. And that is louder than any insult ever spoken. That is the sound of rising.